Hello, my name is 환산스님 and this is Sun Meditation in English. It's time to meditate. So whatever we're doing, whatever is on our mind, let's put all of that stuff down right now and let's enter into meditation together for the next hour or so. And we will now enter into preparation breathing together. So together, inhale deeply through the nose and completely fill your chest. Hold. Then exhale through the mouth. Once again, inhale through the nose. Hold. Then exhale. And now, without interruption, let's enter into abdominal breathing, done only through the nose. Inhale through your nose slowly and gently and push out your lower belly. When your belly feels about 80% full, hold for 2 to 3 seconds, and then exhale through the nose and draw in your lower belly. Once again, inhale. Hold, then exhale. And now, in tandem with our abdominal breathing, let's enter into the question, 이, 뭐, 고, the hwadu, the main focus of our meditation. So inhale, hold, and then together, 이, 뭐, 고. 이모고, this. What is this? What is this that directs my body? What is this that generates my thoughts? What is this that experiences my emotions and my physical sensations? What is this that responds to the call of my name? What is this that is asking, what is this? Once again, inhale. Hold. And then together, 이모고. Once again, inhale. Hold. And for the final time, 이모고. Please continue to meditate in this fashion throughout the course of today's program. Now today, we will be doing the third and final part of our special series on the Sun Buddhist approach to getting into shape, the Sun Buddhist approach to maintaining and enhancing personal health. Now just to review, in the first part of the series, we suggested that in order to really maintain our health, we need a broad framework, a broad system to regulate our behavior, to regulate our thoughts, our emotions, our speech, and our actions. And we referred to the Buddha's original teaching called the Three Learnings. And the distinctive feature of this system of self-development aimed ultimately at enlightenment is that it is based on an ethical basis. That everything must be based on the moral quality of our behaviors, the moral quality of our thoughts, and the way we regulate our emotions. And so that is the first of the so-called three learnings. The first is ethical precepts or ethical discipline. And the basic way that works is that, first of all, we learn to refrain from harmful and self-defeating negative physical behaviors, negative speech, and finally, negative states of mind. And then when we can do that, we begin to engage in positive actions, positive speech, and we try to maintain positive states of mind. And through the balance and stability and focus that we gain through ethical discipline, we are able to enter into the second learning, which traditionally is called concentration and which refers to our meditation. Wisdom is said to be the natural consequence of cultivating ethical discipline and meditation simultaneously. So for Buddhist monks, we gain these three learnings as soon as we become monks. We are given the ethical precepts,
we are given a new Buddhist name, and we're given our hwadu, our meditation method. And so that's the three learnings are given to us. And then we undertake our practice within the context of the monastic environment, which is very, very disciplined. And this leads us to the second level let's say, a behavioral change that we need to undertake to enhance our health. We need to create a structured lifestyle, a schedule. For monks, because we live in a monastic environment, the schedule is there already for us, and we simply need to follow the patterns of monastic living. For those of us, however, who are not able to live in a monastery, nonetheless, we can learn from the monastic system by imitating it as much as we can. So even if you don't have, say, a bell waking you up in the morning and everyone rushing to the Dharma hall, nonetheless, you can set a schedule for yourself. And I would like to suggest that we set a schedule for ourselves by scheduling meditation into our lives, once as soon as we wake up and once just before we go to sleep. And the next thing that I would like to suggest in terms of setting a schedule is to begin setting a schedule of exercise, since the purpose, since the context that we're talking about this all is health right now. So if we can do that, if we can just do those three things, schedule, meditation, and exercise into our daily schedule, what will most likely happen, because people have limited time, is that you end up coming up with a system or schedule to be able to do those things, and we bring structure into our lives. And this is very, very important, that we be able to practice these things over and over and over on a daily basis. And then that will obviously lead to improvement. Now, in the second part of the series, I discussed how to exercise. And I'll just briefly review the points that were made in the second part. In accordance with Sun Master Songdam's teachings, I suggested that if possible, it would be good to learn yoga. Because especially for beginning meditators, yoga famously enhances our flexibility and our postural alignment. So it's very helpful as a support for learning this type of posture for seated meditation. Yoga also uses similar forms of breathing and breath control. So it's something that allows us to segue into learning meditation very easily. Now, even if yoga is not your thing, I would like to suggest that a holistic form of exercise, and by holistic I mean forms of exercise that are not just limited to building muscle and burning fat, which tends to be the modern trend. Forms of exercise that enhance our physical health on all levels, our blood circulation, our digestion, our hormonal balance. Now, some other brief points that I would like to make with regard to exercise is when we do exercise, we can turn it into meditation simply by not listening to music or watching TV while we're doing it. We can just shut off physical stimuli and work out in a quiet way. This may seem burdensome, but it actually does allow us to have the concentration to meditate. And we will find, if you try this, we will find that by meditating, we actually work out much harder and get much more out of our exercise. So for those of you who are interested in sort of being very efficient in your use of time, but still want to meditate a lot, you can combine meditation with exercise. And it follows then that during exercise, you can actually do the abdominal breathing, and some of the most cutting-edge fitness trainers now recommend, they call it diaphragmatic breathing during exercise. And you can do this form of breathing in all forms of exercise except for like a full sprint where you're running as hard as you can and you just can't do the breathing like that. So that's another thing that I would like to recommend. And finally, when we exercise, try to think of this as a permanent lifestyle change, that this is simply the way we will live. I suggest that we do not enter into mind frame like I'll lose a certain amount of weight or I'll get to look a certain way and then I'll stop exercising. So this is what we covered in the first two parts of the series. And for today, what I would now like to talk about is that in modern times, health is usually spoken of in terms of exercise, eating right, and sleep. So I would like to address the remaining two parts of that modern formula from a Buddhist perspective.
So the next thing is eating right. What does it mean to eat right? Now, in the Sun Buddhist monasteries, there's a kind of a joke or a proverb that goes, if you can eat right, you're already halfway to enlightenment. And this statement sort of underscores how actually very difficult it is for most people to come into control of their own eating. Eating is connected to our basic emotions regarding survival and love, and also pleasure. The Buddhist strategy that I think is very, very helpful in these modern times, because eating is so connected to pleasure, the pleasure of eating, the pleasure of the flavor, is to think of it in terms of the Buddhist analysis of craving, of desire. We even say that in modern times, in modern English, I have a craving for something. So the Buddhist approach to craving is this, that the craving cannot be overcome through willpower. Now this is very important, because so often when we try to regulate our eating, when we try to think, okay, I'm going to eat less, or I'm going to eat different kinds of foods, we try to do it through willpower. And the problem with doing it through willpower, according to the Buddhist critique, is that all you're really doing is suppressing your desire. You are not removing the causes of desire, the fuel that keeps this desire going. And by repressing it, all you're doing is building up an internal pressure, and eventually your willpower will give out. You'll succumb to your craving. And I think many of us in the modern world know what this feels like. And when it happens and our willpower breaks and we revert to old, more dysfunctional ways of eating, is that it's not simply that we fall back on a more unhealthy way of eating. It's that we feel bad about ourselves. We feel disappointed in ourselves. We may even feel disgust or loathing at our own behavior. And paradoxically enough, this form of emotional suffering creates within us a desire again for distraction, for pleasure, so that we can forget this pain. And so we go back to eating again. This is why, no matter how bad we may feel about the way we look, no matter how we may fear about our health, it really doesn't help us that much in coming to terms with our eating pattern. What traditional Buddhist teaching offer, instead of using just brute willpower to try and overcome our dysfunctional eating habits, is to use insight, to use the clear perception created by meditation, to clearly perceive the entire process that leads us into unhealthy eating patterns. And this is something that I would like to take all of us through in a step-by-step basis. Now, some of our viewers or audience members may now be engaged in trying to regulate their eating habits. And we may come to a moment where we fail, where we start eating something that we know we shouldn't eat, or we start to overeat, or something like that. That is a very, very important moment. Instead of reacting to that moment with the sort of characteristic disappointment in myself and feeling bad about myself and just, I forget it, let's just eat. I've already broken, what can I do? Instead of thinking of it that way, we need to change our perception of our own mistakes. That is a very unhelpful way of looking at our own behavior, especially behavior that we would like to modify. Instead of looking at a mistake as a failure, we may look at it as an opportunity to learn about ourselves. So literally, I would like to go through this very step-by-step, literally, as we put whatever it is, a potato chip, a scoop of ice cream, whatever, into our mouths, enter into meditation. Do not allow lapses in our behavior to be excuses not to meditate. They are exactly the moments that we should be perceiving and observing our own behavior, so we can learn what we're like when we begin to act unconsciously. So literally meditate when you're, ripping open that bag of chips or tearing open that piece of chocolate or, popping the cover off of a box of ice cream. Is literally go to your posture, do the breathing, and eat, and observe yourself. And as the meditation clears your mind, slow down your behavior. Because there's a tendency when we start to eat in that way to binge eat and go very, very, very fast, because we don't really want to be conscious of the mistake that we're making. So try to slow down just a little bit. And as we slow down, reflect on the chain of events that led to my succumbing to this temptation. And what we will find more likely than not is that there was a negative thought, some negative memory or a negative image or some thought. Or maybe we got a little bit nervous about something that's coming up. Or maybe we're just bored and restless. And then what we find is we enter into this negative emotion and we want to get out of it. And one very easy way to get out of it is to seek pleasure. And the easiest pleasure to seek in modern society is to go get something to eat. And so then we start to eat. And we can observe ourselves while we're eating. And what we find, if you really slow it down, if you really observe what you're doing in slow motion, is that what you find is when you're eating, you are hit by a very, very powerful stimulus, something either very sweet or very salty or very greasy. And the impact of that stimulus is so strong that it makes you forget for a few moments what was bothering you. And the thing about that stimulus is it goes by so fast. As soon as you swallow, it's gone. And so then, your bad mood or your bad thoughts may rise again. So immediately you grab another chip or take another bite. And you go on like that. But if you stay in the meditative mode, what you will find is that in the moment after that initial, very explosive taste stimulus occurs, you will be left with that food in your mouth, whatever it is. But it's probably not good for you. And what you will find when that initial taste stimulus passes is that that food in your mouth, whether it's potato chips or chocolate or crackers or whatever, you'll begin to feel its texture, to understand. Your mouth will pick up its chemical properties, and you will find that you have something really bad for you in your mouth, and your body will have observed. You will not simply have been told by the experts. Your body will observe and perceive for itself that this is really bad for you, that you are putting really bad things into your body under the cover of a very powerful taste stimulus. And if you hold it in your mouth, you'll find that you don't want to eat it very much anymore. And it doesn't end there. After you swallow, continue to observe the effect it has on your body. Don't reach right away. Give yourself 3 seconds or more. And what you will find is that your body doesn't feel very good after you swallow one of these things. And so you're teaching your body to recognize how toxic, how polluted this type of food is. And you do it each time a little bit, each time that you succumb to this junk food. And so you are using your power of observation to become very aware and very conscious of what you're doing to yourself. And this is something that I very strongly want to suggest to all of our viewers and all of our studio audience members. And what I call it is eating food with your body and mind rather than eating food with your mouth. When you eat very quickly this type of food, what you're really doing is focusing on the effect it has on the surface of your tongue. All of our attention is focused on those few square centimeters or square inches. And what becomes very, very obvious in meditation is, do I really want to sacrifice my entire body just for those few square centimeters or few square inches of my tongue? Isn't the rest of me much more important? And as we do this meditatively, we begin to see that food has an aftertaste. It has an after effect. Our bodies respond to it. And when you begin to pay attention to that, what you begin to long for is food that feels good when you're eating it and also feels good after you swallowed it and also feels good several hours later when you're digesting it. That is the total process of eating. It extends all the way to digestion. When we're eating junk food, we are only paying attention to the first few moments, and what we are asking is something impossible of the world. We are asking for pleasure to continue without interruption. But the pleasure of eating, especially the pleasure of unhealthy food, is very, very brief. And it is followed by negative, unpleasant feelings. And if we learn to observe this and see this over and over again, our mistakes become learning opportunities. Our lapses in willpower become learning opportunities to confirm for ourselves over and over and over again how bad it is for us. And then after a while, we begin to feel disgust. We begin to unlearn the habits of reaching for food, for bad food, when we feel bad. So this is another way of using the three learnings. Through meditative observation, we begin to dismantle and dissolve our negative behaviors of eating, and now we have the opportunity to replace them with positive eating behaviors. And this leads us to the next question is, well, if we shouldn't eat junk food and foods that are bad for us, then what should we be eating? And from the Sun Buddhist context, I think that the Korean Buddhist diet is very, very healthy. Korean Buddhist monastics are famously vegetarian. There's different schools of vegetarianism. The most, let's say, radical schools of vegetarianism claim that all forms of animal protein, of flesh-based food, are bad for us. So that would include, not only things like beef and pork and chicken, but also fish and even eggs and cheese and bread. Anything that is derived from animal protein or flesh is considered to be bad and toxic. And there's evidence to suggest that that might be true. And then somewhat gentler forms of vegetarianism allow for, say, eating bread or cheese or things like that, and that just as long as no animals are killed in the process of making it. And then you can go up the various, to just eating a little bit of flesh food. But what's become very, very clear to the point of obvious now, is that eating a lot of flesh-based food is bad for our health. This has been very, very clearly established by science. And especially so-called red meat, beef and pork, are now known to be quite bad for our health, and if you eat it in large quantities, and can even shorten our life expectancy. So this is something that we need to pay attention to what we eat. If at all possible, we want to shift to a largely vegetarian based diet. Now, this kind of advice is certainly nothing new. I mean, there's so many people talking about this. But what I would like to add to that is this. So why don't we take a break here, and when we get back, we'll continue on with our investigation of the Buddhist approach to maintaining health. So thus far, we've considered how to deconstruct and dismantle our unhealthy, negative habits of eating. Now, the next thing to consider in this discussion of health is how we should eat. And I think one of the most important problems, or one of the biggest problems that modern people have now is the problem of overeating. We tend to overeat. And within the Sun Buddhist tradition, there's sort of a piece of advice that's given to us, and that is that we should eat until we feel 80% full. And now this actually has a biological basis, scientists have found, because the signal that tells us that we're full, when we feel the feeling of fullness in our belly, apparently comes much later than the actual event of being full. What that means is by the time we actually feel full and hunger is, the feeling of hunger disappears, our bellies are overstuffed. And what we find is that when we feel 80% full, because the signal arrives late, the signal that indicates that we're full arrives late, when we're 80% full, what's actually happened is that our bellies are actually 100% full. They are comfortably full. They are full in a healthy and harmless way. But nonetheless, I think that many modern eaters who hear this kind of advice, go only to 80% full, don't go to full satisfaction, may hear this and feel like, well, I'm not sure that I can do that. So I would like to share with you the method that Sun Master Songdam suggests to avoid overeating and yet fully enjoy our meals. And this is actually something that I've shared on this program before, and that is to actually meditate while eating, and while eating, chew very much, very often, and chew slowly. Really savor the food. When you force yourself to savor the food, number one is if you happen to be eating food that's bad for you, you'll feel a certain level of revulsion and you won't want to eat that much of it. And on the other hand, if you're eating food that's very healthy for you, you'll really enjoy all the subtle flavors of it. And you'll enjoy the process of swallowing it, and when you swallow it, you'll feel an inner sense of well-being. It'll feel like your body is thanking you for it. It enhances the overall experience of eating. And when you eat that slowly, you're very aware of how your belly is filling up. And when you get to 80% full, you've already fully enjoyed the meal by eating so slowly, so it's easier to stop. Okay? And as we eat like this, I would like to share some observations or reflections from the Sun Buddhist monastic way of eating, the famous Korean Buddhist bowl ceremony of eating. Now, this is an eating ceremony that Buddhist monks in Korea use during meditation retreats. And the idea is to be able to eat and maintain meditation while we're eating. So it's very, very ritualized. And in this, when we're taught the bowl ceremony, we are taught the proper attitude for eating. And that is obviously gratitude for the food that's been given to us. Korean, even in both traditional Korean culture and especially in Korean Buddhist culture, the food that's given to us is taken very, very seriously. It's not taken for granted. It is a blessing that has entered into our lives. The Chinese character for rice is traditionally interpreted to mean 88 tasks or 88 jobs. And what that means is that a minimum of 88 people had to work individually and collectively for this food to arrive at my plate. Now, unless I'm a hunter-gatherer or a forager who's living like a person from 4 million years ago, most likely I didn't grow my own food. Somebody planted seeds or raised livestock. Somebody took the time to raise that food, to harvest it, to prepare it. In the case of rice, the rice has to be shelled and brought together, to package it, to distribute it, so that finally I could buy it and bring it home and prepare it. So every time I eat, every meal is a reminder that there are people who are doing their jobs conscientiously and sincerely, and that their hard work has benefited me. Eating a good meal is evidence that society is going well on a certain level. It doesn't mean that there are no problems in society, but that there are good people out there doing their jobs well, and I am benefiting from that. And so we feel a sense of humility and a sense of gratitude. And this gratitude extends also even to the life forms that we end up eating. It is because these life forms, willingly or not, have been sacrificed that I am able to live. My own life is not for free. It depends on the hard work and sacrifice of so many. In Korean Buddhist monasteries, therefore, because of this, and especially because in the Buddhist monastic context, all food is donated food, which means other people worked for it, bought it, and gave it to us. It has been gifted to us. Every single grain of rice literally is venerated and is not taken for granted. And one of the worst things that you can do in a monastery is to waste food. And that's the second thing that I would like to share with modern viewers, is that try to eat in such a way that minimal food is wasted. Take only the portions that you can fully eat. You can even arrange your table at home like a buffet. Put the food in the middle to be shared and only take out the amount that you eat on your own plate, so that the food in the middle, if there's any left over, you can store it and eat it again later. You don't have to throw it away. So this is a way of eating that ensures that we're healthy, that nothing is wasted, and that shows respect and appreciation for the society and the culture that we live in. And I think all of this is sort of summed up in within Korean Buddhism, the famous convocation that practitioners of the Buddhist bowl ceremony recite before eating their meal. And in English, it goes like this. As in a typical bowl ceremony that's undertaken by sinims or lay practitioners, after the food has been distributed and we have food in our bowls, before eating, we raise up a prayer, a 5-line prayer, and the prayer goes like this.
개공다소 양필에처 촌기덕행.
Where does this food come from? With my level of virtue, I am ashamed to accept it. Discard all of the mind's desires. Recognize this food as medicine to uphold my body. Receive this food as an offering in order to attain the Buddha. Even if we don't think in overtly religious terms, I think that this summarizes the healthiest attitude that we can maintain in our relationship with food. So in this way, we can, through these Sun Buddhist teachings, we can come to terms with the way we eat. Now, most likely, for those of us who have had problems in regulating our own eating, some of our viewers, maybe even some of our studio audience members may think, well, I'm not a Buddhist monastic. I don't live in a monastery. I can't stop eating junk food. I can't switch to a vegetarian diet, and I certainly can't eat only to 80% and then just stop. It's just, no matter how much meditation I do, I'm not going to be able to do it. And what I would like to say to that is that we need to have faith in ourselves, in our ability to change. And in this context, I would like to share my own personal story as encouragement. As you all know, I was born and raised in the United States. And I'm embarrassed to say that before I became a monastic, I was really, really just a classic junk food American. My idea of fruits and vegetables was like strawberry ice cream and pizza. And I could go through, I went through boxes of chocolate like, train going through a tunnel. I lived on soft drinks. It was just the way that I was. I had very, very unhealthy eating habits. And after becoming a monk, one of the most difficult things I had to do was transition to a healthier form of eating. This did not happen overnight. It took a very long time, many failures, many setbacks, many relapses. And what I have shared with you on this program are the methods that ultimately worked for a modern poor eater such as myself. That when we bring meditation into the moments where we lapse, when we're plowing through, a bag of popcorn or something, or a bag of, nachos or whatever, meditate, observe yourself, look at your own behavior in the mirror of your mind, observe what your body is telling you, and then you will learn from the experience. You don't have to just feel ashamed. And when you do that, finally you will learn to eat food with your entire body and not just with your mouth. And with eating to 80%, that also takes time, but by constantly injecting meditation into our eating, we can pull it off. Eventually, we begin to realize it feels really uncomfortable to be over full. It feels kind of disgusting. For a few moments of pleasure, I now have to be uncomfortable for hours and hours and hours. And if I do this for a long time, I end up gaining weight that I don't really like. Going to 80% full, at the beginning it's uncomfortable, and many times we'll break down and go to 100% and feel bad again. But if you just never give up, if you just use these teachings, you can make it. It's taken me time, but I think that if I can make it, then anyone can make it. And I would like to encourage anyone who is interested in changing their eating habits. The trick is to learn from your mistakes and to never give up. And one day the change will happen. So that's what I would like to say on the point of eating. And finally, in terms of the modern formula of maintaining health, there's exercise, there's eating right now, there's sleep. So I would now like to share the Sun Buddhist monastic teachings on sleep, especially in terms of Sun Master Songdam's teachings, because he has oriented his message to a modern audience. And what he teaches in his Dharma speeches is that when we go to sleep, even when we go to sleep, as we lie, we should lie flat on our backs in a relaxed, natural position and meditate as we go to sleep. Do the abdominal breathing and do the imoko hadu. And then as we do that, we'll enter into deeper, more restful sleep where we find that even though we're sleeping shorter hours, we'll still be fully rested. Traditionally, within the Sun Buddhist meditation tradition, 5 to 6 hours of sleep are recommended. Now, just to put that into context, modern-day scientists recommend 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night. And what I would like to say is this: 5 to 6 hours, I think is recommended for hardcore professional meditators who have already managed to create metabolic change within their own bodies. It has long been claimed that if you meditate a lot, then you don't need to sleep as much. But in order to change our overall metabolism to that extent, we do need to practice quite a bit. We have to remember that 5 to 6 hours of sleep is recommended to monastics who meditate 8 to 12 hours a day. So if we're not doing that kind of meditation, then maybe we can give ourselves a break and sleep as much as we need. What we need to think about in terms of regulating our sleep is how stressful is my day? How exhausting is it? The more exhausting it is, obviously, the more sleep that I need. So I think that with the point of sleep, because every serious meditator at some point or another wants to try to reduce their sleep, but this should be done in a very healthy, very reasonable, and wise way. So I'll just say roughly somewhere between a minimum of 5 hours and say 8 hours of sleep per night. But really you want to be giving yourself as much sleep as possible. Please remember that sleep is also is connected to our eating patterns. When we're sleep deprived, we tend to eat more. We also tend to eat more high caloric food because we're trying to give ourselves energy that we didn't get from sleeping enough. So that's the first thing that I would like to say on the topic of sleep. The second thing is this: for insomniacs, meditation can be helpful for people who are having problems with sleep. Now, the thing about people with insomnia is that they tend to look, I have found in my interaction with people who have problems falling asleep, is that they tend to look for what's called the magic bullet in modern medical circles. And the magic bullet is this idea is that there's just one thing that will cure it. Like if I take this medicine, or if I do this one thing like count sheep before going to sleep, or I don't know, do this one thing, then I'll be able to sleep. And I think that's very simplistic. If we're having chronic problems falling asleep, the first thing that we should do is get professional help and make sure that the cause is not physiological or some kind of illness related. Now, if it's not, then what I would recommend is instead of thinking that meditation alone can cure it, think in terms of the 3 learnings. Think in terms of changing our overall way of living so that we reduce stress and nervousness and obsessive thinking. So once again, it would be using all of the sort of teachings that have been presented on this program. Insomnia is a very, very painful problem, very, very difficult problem for those who suffer it, and it requires great patience to deal with it. And so by no means am I offering up meditation as the cure for it, but certainly meditation in the context of the 3 learnings I do believe will be helpful. Now beyond meditation, I think there is also a problem of oversleeping. Now, once again, if we're oversleeping, we should again make sure that the problem is not an actual physical health problem. Go to a doctor or some professional and make sure that you're not having problems in your body. What I have often found in my interaction, both with my native Korean and international friends, is that a lot of friends I find tend to oversleep because when they wake up in the morning, they will wake up on time, but they don't want to face the day. They just want to go back to sleep again. They wake up, they're disoriented, your state of consciousness is very raw and sensitive, and you just start to think about, the job that you don't want to go to, people you don't want to see, things you don't want to do, and it just seems like it's going to be a really unpleasant day, and there's just this feeling of bleakness, and all you want to do is go back to sleep. And so people just hit the snooze button on the alarm clock, go back to sleep, and they hit the snooze button 3 more times and wake up like an hour later. And I think in this context, if that's the kind of problem that we're suffering, then I think meditation is very, very helpful. Now, what you want to do if you're having problems like that is when you wake up, just lie there and meditate. And the Buddhist answer to that is because our thoughts and feelings are not being regulated properly. Our thoughts and feelings are in such a state of disarray that we can't even do those 3 simple things in a predictable, orderly way. So then we may ask ourselves, well, why are our thoughts and feelings so in such a state of disarray? Part of it is because we haven't been trained to. Part of it is because we haven't learned how to meditate and learn these things since we were very young. And so over time, we've developed a lot of bad habits. But I think the overwhelming reason for this state of inner chaos that we find ourselves in is that
the pace of life is getting faster and faster in modern society. Modern life has become much more complicated. Much more complicated means that in any given day, we will be subjected to shocks and unexpected changes at a very, very fast rate. Things will happen at breakneck pace. And this will disorient our thinking and create emotional chaos, leading to bad decisions which destabilize our living patterns to such a point that we can't even exercise, eat right, and sleep right. We will undertake negative escapist behaviors and just basically tie ourselves into knots. So we are facing a great challenge. And the elegance and the beauty of the Buddhist approach is that although it's three simple things, ethical restraint, meditative concentration, and the wisdom of insight that follows from it, these three things are extremely comprehensive. They cover the entire range of human behavior, which means since they cover the entire range of our human behavior at all times, in all places, it means these teachings will touch every part of our lives, and that ultimately is the problem. We think that working out, eating right, and sleeping are three isolated behaviors that we can somehow perform in a vacuum. But the truth is everything in our lives is interrelated. The jobs that we have, the way that we work, how much money we have, what we do with our money, the kinds of social relationships that we have, what we do for fun and recreation, the kinds of thoughts that we have in our head every day, the kinds of emotions that we hold in our bodies and minds every day. All of these things are connected. They influence one another and they influence our health. And our state of health, in turn, influences our experience of all of these things. If I'm having trouble making money, then my mental and emotional state's not going to be good, which probably means my behavior is not good. And strangely enough, that may mean that I start to spend my money unwisely, even though I don't have enough of it. And so problems in one sector or one part of our lives ripple out into all the other parts of our lives. And this is the most powerful Buddhist teaching, the fact that all things are interconnected. Not only myself and all other things in existence, but all the other elements of my life. You touch one thing in my life and everything else trembles in response. The three learnings, the system of the three learnings recognizes this basic fact and condition of our lives and attempts to address everything at the same time. And it's able to do that because it simply focuses on ourselves, on our minds and our bodies, how we regulate ourselves physically, verbally, and mentally at all times. When we can do that, then we can bring peace, stability, predictability, and finally discipline and focus into all parts of our lives. So the Buddhist view of health is actually quite comprehensive and vast and also very, very integrated. Ultimately, at the end of the day, from the Buddhist perspective, the path to enlightenment is itself the path to health. When we pursue a path to enlightenment, correctly understanding the Sun Buddhist teachings, health is a natural consequence. So I believe our time is up, and this will conclude our special three-part series on the Buddhist approach to gaining and maintaining health. Thank you once again for viewing this program, and thank you to all of our studio audience members for attending. And once again, I will close with the traditional Buddhist greeting. May we all attain the Buddha.